Yeah, schizophrenia is not what people think. I mean, yeah, they're walking around crazy hearing voices, right? So these people that are being diagnosed as schizophrenic are actually mediums. And what a medium is someone who can communicate between the spirit world, also known as the afterlife, also known as interdimensional spaces, um, also known as aliens, like with uh, spaces that are from other, like beings that are from other planets. Those are actually spirits. And those people they don't have a place in our society because our society doesn't believe in that anymore, or we believe in it but it's taboo. So if you're, maybe Catholic and you know about mysticism and that part of the church, but it's still off limits. It's something that anybody on earth is sort of like not supposed to be getting their nose into. And the same is true with all these Christian churches. And then you have these oddball churches that speak in tongues, and what they're doing is they're actually allowing these forces, these beings that are lower level beings. Like, can you imagine, like, okay, let's talk about the spirit life for a minute, and think about it too. If the spirit world, if that word triggers you and you don't want to feel into that right now and get over it, think about it as the afterlife. Okay, if that word triggers you, think about it as interdimensional. Okay, so now somewhere in there's going to be a part of you that knows that you've had some kind of experience, whether it was on psychedelics or, it could be any number of millions of things, hopefully several things, several times, where you've had an experience and you're like, something's going on here. So imagine you have every person who's ever existed passes into from this physical dimension into the spirit world, or the multi-dimensional spaces into other dimensions. So now their body, first you have your soul, which you that's the whole point of going through these lives, right? Is to have a soul which is made up of, it's pre-made in a sense, with all these desires, emotions, feelings, and things just to experience life. Well, then that soul is born and has a physical body. Now, when that soul physical body passes, it still has a spirit body. So there's a third part there. People think of the soul and the spirit body as the same thing, but they're actually not the same thing. So the soul's kind of first, it's kind of the commander of the physical body. The spirit body is second. So that is a interdimensional form that's exactly the same as your physical form. It can smell, taste, hear, experience, and has all these same very similar senses, but it's residing in your body while you're going around your daily business, and then at night it actually can leave your body and go into interdimensional spaces. And that's why people have these visions or these weird experiences. Dreams also occur while we're sleeping, so those are two different things. Now, back to schizophrenia. So what you have, if you think of this person that's walking around, I live, the park's right there. There's people walking through the park all the time talking to themselves, and there are local, homeless people that are usually, that have been driven into the state by, through having these massive mental issues. Well, one of the mental issues is schizophrenia, and people also refer to that as paranoid schizophrenia. We'll go into what that means in a minute. But now go back to the spirit life. So every person who's ever passed has a spirit body in the spirit world. Now they can all access the earth plane or beyond. Okay, so they were all, any that lived on earth can access the earth plane. In fact, many of them are doomed and stuck in the earth plane field. So most of them transition into first, second, different dimensional spaces that are, you could say, have levels higher that are that have interstellar boundaries, and we'll talk about that too. That for a moment, just bear with me on this. So you've got a schizophrenic, kind of homeless person walking through the park, rattling off a conversation with what appears to be, voices in his head, because nobody else can hear the voices, so therefore they must be in his head, right? Well, what they're actually doing is just communicating with spirits. Now, the spirits are communicating with are often just earthbound spirits. Some of them could be communicating with spirits that are much higher, that are trying to help them. A lot of them are conspiracy driven, because when they become very mediumistic, because of something that's happened in their life that has kind of taken them into that, whether it could be, a massive amount of amphetamines, that'll push you right into it. It could be rituals. It could be, like for me, I went into this mediumistic state that was very difficult to understand because of how our society perceives it. And so I knew I wasn't crazy, but I was having these experiences, and I was interdimensional, like I was going into other spaces. So I could see other things occurring that other people couldn't see. For example, a UFO, right? Or, meaning spacecraft. So if somebody can see those, see, hear, feel is a big thing, sense, and interact with these spirits, then they're considered paranoid schizophrenic. And the paranoia goes with that those don't exist, therefore you must be paranoid. There's a great saying that just because you're paranoid doesn't mean something isn't after you. So when you become mediumistic or schizophrenic, you can experience often a barrage of spirits that through law of attraction are brought to you immediately just by your thoughts. So if you start putting your nose into, say, conspiracy because you're trying to understand what's happening to you, so you start looking at like alien stuff and things like that, you start going into the space that actually attracts more of that. So, the more you attract, the more you get confirmed, and that is something you don't want to give up too. So people going through this are kind of like in awe. A lot of times they'll say it was like very beautiful, very awful, very heartbreaking, very this, very that, all at the same time, right? Because they're experiencing all these different energies coming at them. I mean, they could have their guardian angels, communicating with them, and they could have this, entity that, wants to marry them, trying to, woo them and showing them, beautiful things. And then they could have these aliens that are trying to shut down and make them think they're crazy, because the spirit world, that is something that some of the legions of spirits are do not want the spirit world to be known. And so they will go around and let everybody in town think that person is crazy. Now, you don't know those thoughts that are being dropped into your head are actually from spirits. So you think, or you even get angry at somebody, and it's not even necessarily your anger. So there's a bunch of kind of conflicting things that are going on not for the medium that's being awakened to this, but also for the people around them. Those spirits are usually trying to get you to put them in a mental institute so they'll get a heavy dose of drugs and not become a medium, things like that. And those are not, those spirits have been around for a long, long time. And they're under, and this is like another topic, but the people that are schizophrenic are dealing with these spirits. They're dealing with them because it's like, we got a medium, whistle, come on guys, let's shut this, fucker down, because, once they know stuff, and if everybody starts to collectively agree that this is happening, it could change the whole world massively in a very short time. And so these spirits are very, very interested in making sure that the medium is shut down and goes into self-doubt. That's a big hook. So because the world around us doesn't agree, so the big hook is, also fear. I had this huge amount of fear because I knew that because of certain things that I expressed. So I was, kind of expressing, whoa, I'm going into walking between worlds, things like that. And, seeing things that are from different time places, different realities in a sense. So when you start sharing those with friends, and it happens immediately, friends and family, those spirits are immediately letting them know, like, oh no, we're not doing this. This isn't right. This is crazy. They're crazy. Don't let them do this. You need to stop them. I remember I had this one friend, and she said, I will hold your hand when you, basically she was saying, I reject you completely as a friend right now. But if you will let me hold your hand and walk you into a mental health clinic, then I'll still be your friend. So that's spirit influence. And oddly enough, that person is highly mediumistic now because of, drugs, alcohol, lots of different things that she's done, and lots of her emotional injuries from childhood. She's gone into this completely heightened state that, she got fired from her job, a job she had for a long, long time, was very, very successful at it. She kind of went off the deep end. And what happened was the breaking point, and this is really important to know, is often something like a massive reality shift. So let's say you're living in I call it the fog, because that's actually an interdimensional, like, kind of transitional space, but you're living in this fog that you're married to somebody who really loves you and cares about you, and all of a sudden you're being confronted with a truth that this person just wants you for your money, and you can't accept it, and you can't accept it. It makes you absolutely resistant to that. You become a target, in a sense, for spirits to hook into and to really mess with you. So anybody, losing everything kind of thing, those kinds of things, loss of a loved one that was close to you, loss of several loved ones, boy, that'll do it. Losses that are financial or love related, family related, children, loss of children, boy, that'll push somebody over the deep end. So if they already have mediumistic tendencies, now sometimes they go and they're not mediumistic, but they go and get, help from whatever self-induced or self-directed help, like smoke a lot of cannabis, do a lot of amphetamines, particularly like on the spectrum, you have MDMA at one spectrum, which is very, very pure and is used in therapy. But on the other end of the spectrum, you have something like methamphetamine. And you take high doses of methamphetamines and things are going to start getting really, really crazy. And those spirits that are hooking into people that are doing like massive amounts of any drug, there's massive amounts of spirits that will hook into that. They will, give you enough energy to keep you alive and keep you addicted so they can live through you, and that, a lot of schizophrenia has to do with being kind of activated because of the drug use. So where somebody maybe wasn't mediumistic in a good portion of their life, and then 1969 came and they did copious amounts of amphetamines, which will cause it. High doses will cause it. And also just even mushrooms, one heavy dose will cause somebody to go from on the big 5 personality spectrum from 50 percentile up to 85th percentile. And that's a study that Jordan Peterson quotes in one of his interviews. But that's a massive shift to go from a 50% personality of openness to 85%. Like, whoa, okay? And then the question is how neurotic you are. So how much do you feel negative feelings? So if you're sensitive to negative feelings, and again, we're going into the paranoid part, right? So you're a sensitive individual, you like to be good all the time. Anything that's questioned or doubted, you feel really bad. Those types of things will really start throwing people off. So if they, do a lot of mushrooms and then maybe say they go into like this heightened level of openness, and then they go and start doing amphetamines too, and they could move right into this kind of schizophrenia. Or, in the spiritual world, or the people of spirituality, we like to call it an awakening, because we're awakening to forces beyond us, forces that show us things, and we don't want to know those forces. We'll deny that. We'll deny that malevolence actually exists, right? For a long, long time. I mean, we've been denying it our whole lives, right? Why start accepting it now until, you have to, because you see that there's actually beings that want to harm you, and people who won't accept that. And again, now we're talking about the homeless people. So they're walking around and they're having this impossible time accepting malevolence as, and that's pretty much like evil, right? So malevolence is evil actions and evilness. So if they're being fed on, for example, through a vampiric force, because they've hooked into somebody who feels like they can't reject that spirit. So, the spirit is here for a reason, I should accept it. It must need me, kind of thing. And it starts to maybe feed on you and use your energy. So that gives a demon a lot of power in the spirit world, and to do things on the earth plane that they wouldn't otherwise have the power to do. So you're hurting your soul condition by letting that spirit feed on you. So, I have a brother who is kind of a punky runaway in high school. I don't really know a lot about him um, as a brother in my younger years because he was already kind of almost 10 years older when I was born. But by the time I recognized him, um, he's looking back now. I finally accepted that some of the stuff he did was um, very cruel and harmful. Like um, he was playing with me and with another sister, and they were throwing me back and forth. Pulled my arm out of socket accidentally, and that wasn't the issue. The issue was that he took me downstairs in the basement, which was already terrifying as a 4-year-old or whatever, and put me in his bedroom on a bunk bed up high with this arm pulled out of socket all alone. And it was like punishment for having to listen to me because I was crying. So, what was going through his head, I don't know, but that might have affected him in a way, like seeing me with my sling at the table, like some kind of guilt, shame way where he started to kind of go a little nuts on that. Like, I'm a good guy, not a bad guy. How does that trauma affect, like, we know how it affects me, but how does it affect the person who's kind of doing the things that harm others, right? So they're dealing with whatever they're dealing with through the way their psyche processes or doesn't process it, but wants to block it out, basically. And when you open up, so let's say it was probably 1960, 72, and he was in, junior high or whatever, got a hold of some drugs that were, getting big in the area of that time, the hippies with the long hair. And that probably just put him right into that, kind of like pushed him into that area. So then, he became a runaway and this and that, and the strange, things happen. Well, it's really clear that he's a medium when you look at the actual facts of who he is now. So I remember one year he came to town, and my siblings and all were, kind of excited and apprehensive to see him. He was at a brother's house. So we all went there, and we hadn't seen him in years. And then sure enough, he comes into the house, and he's raging at us because we were all talking about him. We all deny it, but we had been talking about him. We had been talking about him bad too, like with the vengeance, because he had a van with another van that he was pulling. And the reason he had two vans is because he had too many dogs, and the dogs couldn't all be in the same van together. And he was, making his own dog breed and stuff like that. And these were old junky vans, and he's pulling one around with the other across the country, right? So, I mean, this is about as cuckoo and crazy as you can get for how the world's perceived, and then his paranoia goes into like, I knew you were all talking about me. Well, we were. And we were trying to figure out what to do. Do we call the animal control? Do we call the cops? Do we steal the puppies out and give them away? What do we do? And when he came in, he was already in a rage because he knew we were talking about him. And this is before he didn't know anything. So, we had heard dogs fighting in the van. One of us went into the house. As more of us came in, started to converse about it, with emotion too. So they're going to pick up on stuff more because of the heightened emotion, right? So then, that's one example of how mediumistic somebody who's diagnosed with schizophrenia is, and they're not afraid to show it. So somebody who's mediumistic like me, who doesn't have as much trauma, I was carefully showing it, carefully talking about it, and I couldn't quite explain it. I was having these crazy experiences, right? And if I talked about it, bad things happened. And so I started to get quieter about it. At one point, I had even become possessed, not in a terrible way, but like a spirit entered me and cried through me for a couple of hours. And my sister, who was with me, I was going through, it was a heightened period of going through looking at conspiracy stuff because I was having all these really crazy experiences, and I kept thinking it must be aliens, or because I was getting the alien stuff too. And so as I was going through all this stuff, you know, she had come over, we got into a conversation, started drinking alcohol. And at that time, I drank a lot of wine often. And now, you know, I don't like to drink very rarely because it's, what it does is it leaves you open to spirits coming into you. And that means they can rage through you. So if you're in a bar fights, right? If you're, you know, you're an open female, it leaves you more vulnerable to having sex. Spirits come through that want to have sex through you, or they drop ideas into your head that that's okay to have sex with so-and-so. And then the next day you go, ew, what did I do? Like there's a regret. So a lot of incidences that are alcohol related are actually spirit influenced, and people just think, well, alcohol is bad for me and I do stupid shit when I'm on alcohol. It's because you're actually under spirit influence when you drink alcohol. So anyways, going back to that little story, my sister had come over, we were drinking wine, talking, whatever. I got to talking about something, and then I don't remember anything. And the next day I couldn't find my laptop, and I was freaked out, really, because it was kind of like, it was my, like I was I was cluing into the greater universe through the laptop. So it's almost because our mind, so if you think about somebody, think about grandma's going to be accessible, right? So you how does a medium do their work? They go, okay, Uncle Bob died, let's see if where Uncle Bob's at. Say his name, look at a photo, tune into him, and then you're there. You can see, oh, Uncle Bob, he's doing well. He found his family, and his dog is even with him in spirit. And he's saying these things so that you know he's alive. Well, when you get online, I was learning about myself because I could get on to what, at the time, we only had like MySpace, right? MySpace didn't have groups. So it didn't really serve my purpose as well, but there was something called tribe.net, and that had groups. So you could get into a group of people that were communicating about one type of subject, and I would get all this information, and I could get even like feel the differences between, like I would go from one group to another and interact and feel totally different, and I could see how I changed with my interaction. So I was testing and experimenting to understand how things worked, and that was really, really important to me at the time because I was trying to figure it out. So my sister had taken my laptop, and she said, I wanted to throw it in your hot tub. And she was really upset, and pretty much like, the demons are coming out of that thing and you need to stop it with that. And she didn't want to give it back. I was like really upset because that was my I would have to go to bars otherwise, or go, like, how could I run my experiments? And I wasn't even thinking of it as the spirit world. It was so interdimensional. And so as I had, what had happened that night that had pushed her over the edge and caused her to take my laptop with her home, is that I had, in my pursuit of alcohol, a spirit had hooked into me that was sad and feeling losses that were very similar to the same childhood experiences that I had experienced, and it cried through me for a couple of hours. And later, years later, I remembered the incidences, and through some other work that I've done, and then also had those same experiences, I was able to purge those emotional injuries through ayahuasca, and also through even just kind of allowing myself to go into grieving states. And so there's lots of ways that you can purge those, but the main thing is to grieve, to go into grieving, not an angry type grief, but like, kind of the sins of the world grief, where it's like, this is reality. This is the reality of what happened to me, and it wasn't right, stuff like that, or it wasn't good, even if nobody meant any harm, something bad happened to you, or if people are deliberately out to harm you, there's big healing to be done just through that grieving. So, as a medium, these energies could find their way into me. I remember another time, this was kind of blew me away. I had no idea what was going on, but I was really having a good day, and I was driving my little Beetle around. It was a new Beetle, one of those turbo ones, and it was beige with a black top, and the top was down. And I had my German Shepherd in the back seat, and he fit perfectly. It was like a leather seat, and he just loved to ride in there because the top was down, right? He was a handsome dog, Roy. And as we were driving around town, I was feeling good and everything. And then I was right in my neighborhood, and I had to pull over, and something cried through me. And it's, again, this is a type of possession, and it doesn't mean any harm. So, there's really scary possessions that appear like they even are out to harm somebody, and they're actually not even. They're actually trying to defend. Like I saw one, oh my God, on YouTube just the other day. It was a Muslim little girl, and they were reciting the Quran, and it was all these males doing all these weird things. They were even throwing matches on her, and she kept hissing and like basically acting like a violent, angry animal that's being attacked. And that demon isn't really trying to hurt her. It had just found a place that it felt safe to live, in a sense, and it had hooked in or found her through its own injuries, right? So this little girl was a good place for it to, take refuge in, you could say, right? So they're misunderstood. The demonic forces are actually, the word comes from spirit. It means spirits. It doesn't mean, when we say demons, we always think of it as a negative thing, but it's actually just spirits. So yeah, the negative ones are the ones that are usually interested in us because they're earthbound, or they're in even lower places than with, interest in the earth and what's going on in here. So they're in the earth hells, you could say. But they're, as a whole, spirits are just people. And the older and longer they've been around, the more they look like something else, right? So they can look like angels that are ever youthful and gorgeous and beautiful, and have become celestial beings, you could say. And they are, immortal in this youthfulness, right? Or you could see, you could look up the Goetia demons, and King James Bible, and King James himself was a demonologist. He actually put that all together, and figured out, who they all were. And there's art and images of these demons and what they do. And so like they're always about an exchange, right? So they don't give through the purity of love, right? So you're always going to exchange something, whether it's, your own blood, your life, and because they're going to feed on you in a certain way, or they're going to be able to come through you and have sex with somebody, or many, many, many people, right? So they're always going to want an exchange. And that's how you know that they're a negative spirit, because they're doing it kind of in a way that's not pure of heart. It's very obviously not pure of heart, and it can be even extremely malevolent and not even neutral in that. So whereas, angels are just going to offer you their services in a sense of, let me give you some advice. If you take it, that's great. If not, that's fine too. And that's mostly how I work with my mediumship work. Like, so if I met somebody who was schizophrenic, I would not sitting with them, but I would talk to the spirits that are affecting them. And if they're willing to talk, you can usually find out why they've hooked into this person. So a lot of times they'll just answer any question you ask. So if you say, why are you doing this? They'll say, oh, they could be very angry. Why shouldn't I? He deserves it. Da da da. So you have somebody angry. It's like revenge. It's because it happened to me. I'm going to do it back to you, kind of thing. So you can usually kind of just even ask, or why are you doing this? Oh, because he gives me sex. Oh, because he takes drugs and I get to live through that when he does that. So, medium work, the main thing is, you ask and you try to figure out what it is they want. Like, what would you rather have than this? Is there something you would rather have? And if you could just show them how they can get it, because it's always a better life. And then they'll leave in a peaceful way. So you're not like holding a crucifix up and saying, get out of there, you're a bad demon, and we know what you're trying to do, and you're evil, and all this stuff. Like, that stuff, or constantly reciting like the Lord's Prayer, the prayers in the Bible and stuff, can actually call in worse ones, because a lot of those are just attached to old kind of a bunch of mean Catholic spirits that are still hung up on their righteousness and stuff. So, there's always evil in every corner. You could say, like, you're not going to find purity anywhere. So you can't go like, okay, it's a Catholic spirit, we're safe, or it's a Catholic spirit, we're not safe. Neither statements are true. It's just a spirit that happens to be associated with the Catholic Church, right? So just like a person. So they're just people that have passed, and they can look part animal, and they can shift and change into form. It was funny, I had one just the other day where it was like, kind of looked like a normal spirit coming towards this guy who had just passed recently. And then I said, okay, well, why don't you guys come into this space and get out of that container that this guy had been put in by beings that wanted to reincarnate him. And that brings up a whole nother topic. But the spirit that was with him was on the left, and he shifted, and I could see he was like basically exactly like the Grim Reaper, but without the scythe, right? So he wasn't harvesting apparently. And I'm not sure what he was up to, but I just told the guy, like, you know, you might not want to go with him because his spirit body is really dark and he doesn't look like he is something good for you. And, you know, and so, and then it just left. It just left because it doesn't, once you know, it's like, hey, we see you. A lot of times they're like, okay, they'll just go find somebody else. Or go do, you know, they're not gonna, you know, say, oh, but I'm not that. It's like, really? I don't think you'd be dressing up for Halloween in the spirit world as much, would you? It's not even Halloween. So, again, you know, with schizophrenia, you've got people that are being mediums that could maybe provide a great service to their community and mediumship work if we had a way of encouraging them and bringing them into our communities and also healing them where they have an understanding of how those spirits are hooking in and what's going on with those and why they're hooking in and why they want them to just be totally distracted on, you know, alien agendas and conspiracy agendas. It's a great big distraction to keep them from actually acknowledging it's all the spirit world. And when I say the spirit world, I do mean interdimensional too. And the dimensions are, you know, there's a lot that they want you to think. So let's say you have a big legion of spirits in the spirit world that want to control humanity. What they definitely want high on their list would be, don't let you know how the spirit world works. Because if you know how the spirit world works, everybody's gonna know we're here and they can see us and they know what we're up to. So if you were sitting, you know, in your living room right now and you could see 6 spirits around you, 3 of them were total assholes that had no good intentions. 1 was your guardian angel or guardian spirit, you could say. And another one was a spirit guide, and another one was like your uncle because he always liked you as a kid, and he still does. And he likes giving you advice and helping you fix your truck. So you've got 6 in the room with you and 3 that are malevolent. Well, you can't see them because you don't even believe the spirit world exists. Now, if you knew the spirit world exists and you could see them and you could see their faces, you would know that they were up to no good. And so you'd just be like, hey guys, why are you even here? Like, you know, so they wouldn't have any power because you would know what they were up to. So you can think of on a high level of controlling our political powers. So you got, you know, really nice guys becoming president and then doing really dumb things. Like, now we're at war. How did that happen? I thought we had a nice guy for president. Or now we're not at war and we should be. Thought we had a nice guy for a president who was protecting us. So there's an influence that's going on in the spirit world. And a person who doesn't have the tools because it's all been cloaked and they've been given all these different answers. And I know this so well because for 10 years, I literally ran from that stuff. And it was massive. Like I had massive, massive proof and encounters of all kinds of things that were going on in my life. And these are all for other videos. But had I just had a little bit of support, like, you're talking to spirits? Or, you know, you're walking between worlds, you're this, you're that. Let's talk about it. Let's write it down. Let's go through this stuff. Let's see if we can find, you know, other people going through it. Um, Now, part of the agenda too is to isolate you. And so they'll drop into your head, exactly that the types of things that will force you into isolations, and they'll separate you just the same way a narcissist or a sociopath as a spouse will keep keep his wife, you could say, away from all of her friends and family, all of her support, in the same exact type of way. The spirits are going to do that so that you don't have any power in the world. And I know firsthand how that works. And even how much just even asking for change, how dangerous that became. And the way they hook into you again, is through childhood injuries. So wherever your fears are, your shame is, or your, like for me, my brother was, schizophrenic, and he was quite the asshole and did quite a lot of awful things and really made my parents suffer a lot and my family suffer a lot. Well, as a, um, you know, as a medium trying to awaken to that, and then being feared that my family would perceive me in the same way. And they did, they did. I remember, just, not exactly the same because I wasn't destructive. I was, my own life was destroyed, but I wasn't going around and, abusing people or, getting into a lot of trouble. And, those are things that we fear. So if somebody's awakening to their medium abilities and they don't have support, that's going to push them more and more off the deep end. And that's going to allow worse and worse spirits to get a hold of them and to come through them and interact with them. And the whole thing is just one big kind of nightmare after a little while. It's like, turning to drugs and alcohol because you want to shake off, the bad feelings of the way society perceives you, things like that, only make it worse. And so, that's a little bit of, in a nutshell, what schizophrenia really is. And, it's the medical profession's going to call it what it will, because it has to look at things the way it does, because that's the training. That it's like we have to just try to dissect the brain and look at the chemicals and stuff that are consistent. There's a really cool investigator in Eastern Europe somewhere, I forget where, but he started noticing as a therapist that his patients that were schizophrenia oriented, sort of, they were starting to have these symptoms, also tested positive in toxomosis, I think it was. And he said that, it's kind of hard to do a double-blind study, whatever, because of the way it was coming through. But he noticed there were some possibilities. So it's possible now, from my perspective, that would be more like, well, then that bacteria is actually something that's activated in your body. Of course, you've picked it up somewhere at some point. But because of that, you're now, again, just like a heavy dose of amphetamines, it pushes you into that. So it doesn't mean it causes it, right? So, but it kind of can push you into it, right? Like you're already kind of mediumistic, or maybe there's some tendencies. And then, you're going to be pushed into that. So if you have any questions, just put them in the comments below. I have a lot more to talk about on these subjects, and definitely subscribe so I can get my channel kind of up to 1 billion subscribers to, hopefully make some money someday off off of the channel, but for now it's just gonna hardly probably get any attention. It could take years, but so that's it. Hopefully that, will be soothing to somebody who has, that in their family, or that maybe they're showing signs. And I know the awakening is the nice way of talking about it. And that's awakening again to your multi-dimensional universe. So even people who don't decide to go full force into mediumship, they have an awakening on different, even, different interests that have to do with our reality. So they might not be so interested in, conversations with aliens and spirits, but they could be interested in mathematics or something, and they could be getting downloads, so to speak, from great mathematicians that have passed, or demons that want to hook into them and barter and trade sex for math. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of something to think about, and I appreciate you being here and listening. Thank you.